Hello, everybody. Welcome back. My name is Megan. I'm the Mood Read Queen. And on today's video, we'll see. I have a plan, but if it gets long, I'm going to abort the plan or alter it. But on today's video, we are going to talk about 3 book series that I would suggest if you love ACOTAR. So if you don't know what ACOTAR is, then I guess we'll go into a brief explanation of that. But if you've been around fantasy in the last, I don't know, 10 years, you probably know about Sarah J. Maas. She's incredibly popular, incredibly famous, and she has now, I believe, 3 series. One is completed, that's The Throne of Glass. I'm about to say something blasphemous here. I have not read that series. And then there's ACOTAR. The first book is A Court of Thorns and Roses. That's where we get ACOTAR from. And then the last one is, it's like a house of, what is it? It's like, the latest one that came out is like a House of Sky and Breath or something. I sound terribly uninformed, but I haven't read those either. So I'm coming at you from, I've read 4 books in a novella by Sarah J. Maas. And that is the ACOTAR series. It starts off as a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and then kind of shifts into a complicated Fae realm. Just stuff happens. And you know that if you've read ACOTAR. And if you haven't, and I'm not going to get into ACOTAR because you can go watch, there's hours and hours and hours and hours of videos out there that talk about ACOTAR. But suffice to say that sort of the sort of base of ACOTAR is human characters interacting with a fantastical Fae world, learning about that world, learning about its people, probably coming face to face with magic or special abilities, that kind of thing. Like that, when people talk about ACOTAR vibes, that's typically what they're talking about. Usually, there's a very famous character in ACOTAR. His name is Reese, and he is sort of funny and dark and brooding and traumatized and really the sexiest person Fae you've ever met, basically, in your whole life. And he's a whole vibe in and of himself. And so a lot of people might compare certain books to ACOTAR because there might be characters that remind them of Reese, or relationships that remind them of Reese and Feyre, who is, you guys know. You know or you don't know. Anyway, go watch an ACOTAR video, because I am not about to make that video, because I haven't read those books in 2 years, and I'm going to listen to the graphic audio, the new graphic audio books when they're all done, but they're not done yet, and so there we are. Anyway, okay, now after 3 minutes and 40 seconds, let's start talking about these series. So we're going to talk about 3 series. I believe each series is still ongoing, with there being at least 2 books in each series. So the first series I'm going to talk about is actually one that I have in front of me, and this is the Married to Magic series. It is by Elise Kova. These are the only Elise Kova books I've read. I know she's quite popular. She has a lot of books that I want to read, but I just haven't gotten there. So the first book, let me make sure that I remember people's names, because I didn't do my homework. You know that. If you're watching this video, oh look, that's when they shipped it to me. I ordered it in February for my classroom, and then I stole it back. It's mostly appropriate. Okay, hold on. Let me figure out these people's names. That's a weird table of contents, too. The pages are pretty. Aha. Okay, got it. So, the first book is called A Deal with the Elf King. And these books are not YA, but they are not as spicy, I guess we could say, as the ACOTAR books. So the ACOTAR books sort of amp up in spice level as you go. So the first book is, I'm not saying it's like PG-13 or anything, but it's not quite as educational as, say, like the latest book, like A Court of Silver Flames, which came out like 2 years ago, is like, whoa, all right, I see what we're doing here. I see it. So this is not necessarily Fade to Black, although it's not far from it. So if you're like, I need to see it, then maybe this isn't the book for you, or the series for you. But honestly, they're really good books. So the first book, I'm going to try to do quick summaries here. We know what I mean when I say that. So we have Luella and Eldest. So we've got, Luella, Eldest. In this village, town, wherever Luella lives, like 3,000 years ago, I think the back says, they've had this deal with the Elf King. And it is that, like, every generation, basically, a woman from this settlement will go to the magical realm, because there's fae there, there's elves there, there's all sorts of other vampires and stuff. And she will marry the Elf King. And it is sort of a mutually beneficial relationship. But it's one that, like, the woman will typically have some sort of magical abilities that manifest by a certain time in her life, and that's how she's chosen. There's always going to be just one. So Luella is a healer, and she wants to go to school so she can come back and continue to help her community. She can mix up poultices and different medications and things like that. Oftentimes people can't pay for them, but she still wants to help. And that's really all she wants. She doesn't have huge ambitions. And she doesn't even want to accept the help of her community and basically taking a collection to send her to school, but it would help her become better at what she already does. And she has a close friend whose name I do not recall, but you realize pretty quickly that this guy is not who... Well, I mean, he is who he says he is, but he maybe isn't the best friend in the whole world. He might have some ulterior motives. But basically, Luella is this generation's future elf queen. And the last one died, and she would come to visit like once a year or whatever, like a few years ago. And the new one should have already shown herself, but she hasn't shown up yet. And what are we calling where they're from? Midscape. Oh, there it is. The magical land of Midscape. So the land is struggling because they don't have their human queen. Sorry, I meant human queen. There's an elf king and then a human queen. And Luella is that person. She does not know she is, but that's the short end of the stick, is that she is. And so Eldest, who is the elf king, comes to get her because they can't wait anymore. Like, the situation is dire. And so he comes, and they don't have an elf or a human queen for him. And eventually it's all revealed. She is the human queen, or will be the human queen. She has a vast amount of magic that she did not know that she possessed. Although in hindsight, she can see it. And so she goes with Eldest to reside in Midscape and to be the human queen. And when she gets there, it's clear that, like, things are not okay. So she sits on the throne, and it like sucks out like so much of her life force. She's like incapacitated because Midscape has been dying, and the connection that was forged between the humans and the elves, however many thousands of years ago, was broken. Like something at its core was not meant to last. And so Eldest is sort of surly, and he's not happy she's there either, but like it is what it is. Like he needs her there. But she wants to go home, and she makes a deal with him that if she can figure out how to fix this, then she can go home. And so she likes to solve problems. There's a mystery element to this because she wants to figure out why, like with every generation, the human queens have less and less power. And it takes more and more out of them to sit on the throne. And the human queens and the elven kings don't have like romantic relationships. It's just like in name only, basically. And so she is reading through the diaries of the prior queens and trying to figure out like what they have been putting together as well, like things that they have noticed. And it's a fascinating book. I will say I kind of called it close to the end. I mean, it's not a huge book either. In comparison to ACOTAR, I mean, it's a little over 300 pages, so it's not like a big book, but it's interesting because you've got the whole enemies to lovers, the whole forced marriage, forced proximity thing. She's new to the realm. She doesn't understand everything that's happening. And I really, really enjoyed this book and was immediately excited about the next one in the series. So, again, the spice level in this series is not going to be necessarily comparable to ACOTAR, but if you want more of that sort of vibe in terms of the fantasy, then I think that this is it. Then, the second book in that series is called A Dance with the Fae Prince. And when I found out about this, I about keeled over and died. I was so excited about it. I read it like pretty much immediately upon it coming out. And then the third one is coming out soon, and it's called A Duel with the Vampire Lord, I think, or something like that. And I'm just stoked. I'm so excited. So this is a similar type thing. They're all about women who end up becoming married to someone who has magic in this magical realm. So again, that ACOTAR element. So this is about Katria. And what is his name? You're not going to say, are you? Really? Is it? Well, they call him Lord Finwood, but that is like not. Is it Davian? You have the girl name on the back, but you don't have the boy name? I think it's Davian. Yeah, we're going with that. We're going with Davian. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But his name appears way too much for that not to be his name. Okay, so Katria, it's kind of almost a Cinderella type situation. She lives with, I think she's got some sisters, maybe step siblings. I can't remember. And she's basically being sold off in marriage to this mysterious guy named Lord Finwood. And it's going to get rid of some of her family's debts. And so she travels to his estate and doesn't really see too much of him when she first arrives, which again, ACOTAR vibes for reals. She doesn't have any delusions that, like she's going to love him or anything, but maybe she can be happy. Maybe she'll at least be free of her I think it's her stepmother and her step siblings, but it could just be like a bad family situation straight up. I don't remember. But what she doesn't realize, and so I'm going to be honest with you, I cannot remember the specific reason why he marries her. And I don't know how important it is. Like, there's a deal between them. He marries her. And she is supposed to stay in the house, in the mansion or whatever, what have you. But she doesn't. And she comes upon him and several other people sort of like in this forest, in this clearing, doing basically a ceremony where he will like then be like formally recognized as like the prince of this land. And I don't really know. I mean, it's in Midscape, but it's like the the Fae section. There's all these different like divisions, like kind of countries. They all have their own monarchs, etc. So she kind of messes that up, and then I think what happens is she'll be negatively affected by what's happened, and so they have to basically like save her and take her with them. And is it Davian? He is supposed to sort of like bring peace and be the new Fae King, Fae King. But he's been protected his whole life because he is the only one left in terms of like in their line. And the line is sort of like fuddled by the time it gets to him. But he's the only one that has the lineage to be the king. And so I'm going to be honest with you, I don't remember everything about this book. I need to reread both of these before I read the new one. They are standalone, but there's a little bit of character crossover. So like this couple does show up in this book, I think briefly. But for someone who loved this book so much, I really need to, I read it so quickly though. And so basically she is new to this world. She is meeting new people. She is, with him as he's going on this journey, because he's been basically training his whole life and studying to be the king, and to take it away from the person who is like the unrightful ruler or whatever. And but there's something about Katria that is interesting, that is a little unexpected. And you will figure it out too, just like in the first book. You kind of get a little more heads up than you need about what the twist is going to be. But both of these books do a great job of world building in a short amount of time. They are both, I think, around the same length. Second book is a little bit longer. And the third book does come out soon, I think this fall. It's called The Duel with the Vampire Lord, I believe. I'm very excited about it. She announced the cover not too long ago. But again, they're lighter, easier reads. They're fun. They're sexy. They're not too spicy, but they're romantic. And they're just well done, easy, fun reads that I would highly recommend. I don't know if that did it for you. So that is the Married to Magic series. I don't know how long she'll keep going with the series. I really hope that she keeps... I don't know about you, but I love a series, and you'll see this in the next two series that I talk about. I love a series that takes like one character that was introduced in the first book and then gives them a book and then and manages at the same time to tell an interesting story. The plot points in these two, this is in relation, I think, specifically to the elves, although everyone benefits from what happens here. But this conflict, I think, could potentially impact the whole the whole realm. I don't know. I can't remember. But they're very separate. There isn't like a huge overarching issue that goes in both. They're kind of more separate. So the next series I'm going to talk about is called, the first book is called The Fae King's Curse. And again, I'm going to consult my handy phone. And it's actually called the Between Dawn and Dusk. So let me just rotate a little bit here. Okay. So Between Dawn and Dusk, there are 4 books in this series, I believe. And there is a prequel as well. I think she stated that she does want to do at least one more book. I hope she does, I think, 2 more books, because and I'll explain kind of what I hope they're about when we get there. So these books focus on 3 princes or kings, depending on what what timeline you're checking in with them. And the first book, okay, and also these have terrible covers, like bad. And I think it's this another video where I talked about one of these. They're like, I've literally seen for the first book, I have seen this exact person on no less than, now I saw it again today, 4 different book covers. This stock photo, like edited in different ways, and it's just not good. But don't let the covers fool you. They're great books. So the first in the series is called The Fae King's Curse. And this is my favorite in the series, and it is one that was my favorite book in, I think, March or April. I did a book bracket where I talk about it, and I love it. So this is about Kyrian and Quinn, and I'll probably explain this one in a little more depth and then kind of more quickly go through the rest of the series. So Kyrian is, when we meet him, we meet both of them, they're both 12 years old. And Kyrian is a Fae prince, and he almost drowns in this river that is next to Quinn's house. And Quinn is living in, like, I think it's like the upper East Coast, like the Northeast, I believe, like Pennsylvania or something. I just made that up, but I think it's like close. And it's like normal, like contemporary time period. And she meets this boy who, he is blind, and he has a little bit of an accent, and he calls her a peasant when he thanks her for saving his life. Okay, right? No, dude. Bad plan. So anyway, she saves him, and they get to talking, and they're super cute, and she doesn't really believe him that he is from this Fae realm where he says he's from. And they say goodbye at the end of the day, and she tells her parents, hey, I met this boy in the forest and we had fun and stuff. And they're like, whoa, 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 whoa. You left a child like yourself in the forest and you don't know what happened to them? And she's like, well, when you put it that way. So they actually call for help. And the next day, Kyrian is going to try to come visit. And he goes through a portal, and he would go through a portal. But when the portal opens, he hears a lot of shouting and dogs and barking, and he's like, ooh, I probably shouldn't go. So he goes the day after, so it's been 2 days. And when he shows up, Quinn is like, whoa, you look familiar, but like, who are you? And he's like, it's me, Quinn. And this is where the interesting aspect of this, I mean, there's several interesting aspects of this series, but this is where one of my favorite aspects is introduced, and that is this idea that 1 day in the human realm is 1 year in the Fae realm. So he is now 14 years old and she's 12. So I realized, like, very quickly this could get a little bit creepy. It doesn't. I don't know how Jamie, I think it's Schlosser, does this, but it is like impressive. So within the first like week of them knowing each other, clearly nothing's happening between them. They're not holding hands anymore because they had a little bit of romantic interest when they first met. And you move pretty quickly through the next 6 years. And then Quinn is 18 years old. And she decides she's going to go to college. She has an older sibling, I think, but she's basically an only child. And she feels like she should go to college. It's what people do. She doesn't really want to. She's not super interested in it. And she's never felt like she belonged anywhere. Which is kind of an interesting concept that you see a lot in these sort of ACOTAR-esque books that come out. This idea that this human woman, or maybe sometimes not human, doesn't feel like she belongs where she's at. And then eventually she ends up where she belongs. So Quinn tells Kirian at the last minute, she's like, hey, I'm going to be leaving tomorrow. And I won't be back until Thanksgiving break. And Kirian, and they haven't spoken about feelings because she's 18. And where he comes from, Fae women don't reach like maturity until they're 21, which is different from, well, and again, maturity is a arbitrary concept, right? Like physical maturity even is different for everybody, as well as mental maturity, emotional maturity, etc. But in the Fae realm, it's 21, and then we're using 18 as the year for the human realm. So that would maybe explain why he hasn't spoken about it. But they spend all their time together. They're best friends, like best friends. And she tells him, I won't be back, and it'll be like 100 days. And he flips his shit. I mean, he's a really nice guy. He doesn't get violent or anything. But he flips his shit because he's like, that's 100 years for me. I don't think you realize. Like, I cannot be without you for that long. And she knows at this point that he is cursed, that he is the reason why he is blind. And that is something that, so it's him, and then he has two cousins. And one of their fathers, I can't remember which one, I can't remember names right now, but there was a blight that was killing off all these Fae women, in particular, I think in the day realm. There's like the night realm, the day realm, and the dream realm. And the night realm and the dream realm split at one point, and then there's the day realm. I think I might have said that wrong. Whatever. We'll keep going. So the witches who were the cause of this blight, the king of the day realm, basically like had them tortured and beaten and all that stuff. And then as to get back at him, basically they like cursed any of the people who were like in power, and it would have been their kids. And so the day realm son, the night realm son, and then the dream realm son all were either born blind or would become blind when that happened, when the curse took effect. And so Kirian was like 10 or 11 when it happened. So he's still relatively new to his blindness when she meets him. But he's also spent years and like, I don't know how old this guy is, hundreds and hundreds of years old, maybe getting into the thousands at this point. So he is incredibly adept at living without his sight. He's an incredible warrior. He can smell things. He can fly. And at this point, he's actually the king, I believe, because the Fae live so long that they sort of decide when they're going to retire and give it to the next, And so he's like, and there's a kind of built into the curse is this idea that the curse can be broken if each man, each Fae king or prince finds his fated mate. And every one of them has like a clue. So Kirian's is, he'll know her by sight, and she'll be marked by like the sky at night. Here's the problem. He's blind. How the hell is he supposed to be able to see her? Right? Like, right? So, she knows about this. Quinn knows about this, and she doesn't want to prevent him from breaking the curse. And there's this beautiful line in the book where he's like, I can live without my sight, but I can't live without you. And so he kind of on an impulse pulls her into his realm, and she will only be gone for one day, so her family won't freak out. But it'll be a year for her. And that's a year for them, technically, to be together in the Fae realm and for her to think about their future and to think about whether or not she really wants to put his destiny in jeopardy. Because even if he so much as kisses another person, there's no hope of breaking the curse. And they've already kissed. But she still thinks, well, a kiss isn't that bad, right? Like, we didn't have sex or anything. So they're trying to track down the witches because there are rumors that they're back. And so we have that storyline going on, and we also have her wanting to meet, I cannot remember now who, Kirian's cousin, what's his name? Damon. Oh, duh, I don't remember. Damon can dream walk, and he has like this, he's sort of like go-to witch, and she's a fantastic character, and she ends up helping Quinn and revealing a few things to her that are important that she knows, because Quinn wants to have the chance to be able to help Kirian find his mate and get him his sight back. And it is an excellent book. The cover, as you can clearly see here, not the bestest, okay? But it's really good. So then the second book, I'm going to go through these a little bit faster. It's called The Fae King's Dream, and it is about Damon, who we met in the first book. And this girl named... what the heck is her name? Are you telling me that I did not leave a review for this? Wow. I'm a slacker. Whitley, duh. She had a great name. So Damon has been blind. I can't remember if it was since he was 5 or since birth. One of them has been blind since birth, and I think it's since he was like 5. And his clue is that like things won't be what they seem or something like that, and that like he'll meet his fated mate in someone else's dream. And so many years ago, his parents actually left to go to the human realm because they had this very strong feeling that she was going to be there. And so at the beginning of the book, he dream walks. Damon doesn't have his own dreams, and he can see in his dreams. But he can't see otherwise. And again, same situation. He's waiting to break the curse, or hoping to. But he's also like, and he's more pissed off about the curse. Whereas like Kirian in the first book is like, I don't need it to break. I'm totally fine. Damon's like, I gotta break this fucking curse like now. Okay? So, Whitley actually is involved in a car accident with her parents, and she's in a coma, and she's not doing well. And she is someone that his parents had identified as, like, probably potentially being his mate. And so he is able to see her in a dream when he visits his father in a dream. And then he has to visit her in a dream. It's interesting. So he can figure out how to get to her. And then he has to work with other people to get a portal to get her back. Or to get her to the Fae realm, because otherwise she will not live otherwise. And he brings her there, and she doesn't have anything waiting for her back home, because her parents died in this accident. And so she has this guy who's like sexy, and, you know, he's Fae, and saying that they're mates. And so she's going to give him the benefit of the doubt. And Whitley's a little bit more, I don't know. All the women are all very different characters, which I liked. But the storyline with the witches is still ongoing. So, you know, they're causing issues. Maybe they're coming back. We didn't really solve that much in the first book. So that is still something that we're going to need help with. You've got Kirian and Quinn who are still coming back. So this is following Damon and Whitley's story. And you also learn a little bit more about why Whitley was adopted, because she knew that she was adopted, what could have happened to her real parents, and she starts like manifesting abilities, which you can do as a human if you stay in the Fae realm long enough. But like, she's barely there at all at the beginning, and she's already starting to like change, and you find out reasons why that is, and it's really cool. And it's probably so I really liked, like, book one's my fave. Books two and three are like maybe tied or close to it. And then book four is my least favorite. So then the third book is another cousin. So it's Xander, and Xander killed his father at the end of the first book, and he is now the king of the Day Realm. And he has been trying to stop this horrific practice of Fae men stealing human women. His mother is human. He is the only one of the three princes and then later kings who does not have any innate Fae abilities. Kyrian can control the weather. Daemon can dreamwalk, but he doesn't have any abilities because his mother is 100% human. The other characters, Quinn and Whitley, are not 100% human, which is pretty common actually. But his mom was, and so he does not have any special abilities that he was born with. And when he was a child, so he was one that was born blind, I believe, because he is the youngest, I believe. So his father was fed up. He had this blind son, and he was like, and he had like this whole harem of women that he was like basically sleeping with every day to try to like get one of them pregnant. And so the reason he married his mother is honestly just because she's the one that got pregnant first, which is like horrific, right? So bad. So when he was like 5 years old or 6 or something, his father like basically gets a wizard to give him an ability, and the wizard's like, your son's going to be the most powerful man in the Day Realm. Well, he turns him into a griffin shifter. So it's an like incredibly painful like shifting process when he does shift, but he can see when he's a griffin. And so he has been, ever since he took over from his father, and ever since the three kings have now, like the three cousins are now working together, he has been trying to put an end to these like auctions that are happening. And so he starts the book off at an auction, and his clue is that he'll know her by her voice, but she won't be there by choice. And so he's already put two and two together that he's probably going to meet her at one of the auctions, and that she'll probably be human. And so that's another reason why he goes. So, what is her name? I just realized that none of these have. Her name is Maylin, I think, but he calls her May, and she's pissed about it. But May was forcibly taken from her home. She has a life, she has a family, and when he hears her, she has to show a special ability when she's put on stage for the auction. And so she sings, and he like feels it in his core that this is his mate. But she wants to go home. So when he saves everybody, and he and his soldiers break everything up, there are girls who want to stay and girls who want to who want to go home. And because they have like sort of this place set up where like women can because a lot of these women have come from bad situations, and so they might need that help, and if they choose to stay. And May is she a counselor or something? Or was that Whitley? One of them, maybe May, probably May. But I don't remember. I think it's May. She is like a trauma therapist or something. And she graduated early, so like, she's still too young, but whatever, we're gonna let it slide. And so he's trying to convince her to stay, but he can't tell her the whole mate thing. And he's not even sure if the mate thing is still going to work because the witches have been at this point killed. Although we still have like some extraneous stuff dealing with that. And anyway. So it's kind of him convincing her that they have something, maybe lying to her about her staying. And it's really good. And there's also something that's messed up with their bond that wasn't messed up with the other characters in their books. And so they have to kind of patiently work through that. And then the last book is, I would like to think that it's the start of a new trilogy within this series. I'm not going to talk about the novella. Well, the novella is about Kirian's parents, and I kind of read it last, and you should probably read it like second. So it's fine. I'm not going to tell you about it, but it's about how Kirian's parents meet and get together. So the last one is called The Fae Warrior's Princess. And this one seems like it's the start of a new series. So this is about Torius. But I think that there are 2 other guards who are also friends with Kirian in the first book. I think one of their names is Kai, and I really want each one of them to get their own book. So Torian is Kirian's one of his best friends. And when Kirian and Quinn have a daughter, Torius goes to meet her. And you're not supposed to be able to know until you're like 16 whether or not you're like a fated mate with someone. Because it's still supposed to be pretty rare, but like, of course it happens to every single one of these couples. And this could be weird, but again, I think they deal with it pretty well. He meets her when she's 5 months old, and he has this like intense reaction. And obviously she's 5 months old. She's a baby. But he knows that there's like this like knowledge weirdly in her little 5-month-old baby eyes that like something weird has just gone down. And he like flees and gets the hell out of there and ends up taking a mission from Xander, the Day Realm Prince, or King, to go find his mother, because she disappeared at the end of the 3rd book, and to get back to her life before she was living in this Fae world. And so Torius is like, I'll go, because it's going to be a couple weeks. But he's thinking, if you are separated from your mate, or you're together but you're denying your connection, you can get like mate madness or whatever. And it can actually like drive you crazy, and you can like die. And he doesn't want to do that. And also it would be weird watching her grow up and then like also being her mate. Like, it's funky, okay? So he's like, I'll be gone for a couple weeks in the human realm, and that'll be a perfect time for her to grow up without me, mature, and then I'll come back and maybe we'll see if this thing will work. Which I know sounds weird, but it's okay. It's okay. It's still not my favorite in the series, but it's interesting. But she is not happy about it. She's 18 years old. And again, her name is Danietta, and they call her Danny. She knows what he did, that he left. And she feels abandoned. And she understands why he did it, even though they've never spoken of it. But she is done waiting, even though she's only 18. And she's not, like, she hasn't reached maturity, if you're considering, you know, the Fae rules. So she goes to find his ass. And when she does, she stays overnight. I think it's somewhere in South America, like maybe Brazil. And she like weirdly matures overnight. So like she looks like she would if she were 21-year-old Fae, but now she's like an 18-year-old Fae who went to the human realm and then matured like an 18-year-old female human might. And so she finds him at this bar with, I think it's a bar, with the woman that he went to find, which is Xander's mother. Or I think it's Xander's mother's sister or something. And they're like, boom. And he thinks, oh shit, did I miscalculate? I thought I did the math right. Because it's only been a couple weeks for him, right? And so then they bang mercilessly, basically, and they commit themselves to each other, and it's crazy, and you're like, whoa, this is nuts. Because in the first book, you really have to wait a while for stuff to happen. No, this book is like, boom, let's go. And so then the next morning, or like 2 days later, because they like just have an unceasing amount of sex, basically. These books are definitely spicier than the previous series that I talked about. Anyway, so that's what happens. And then she reveals to him accidentally that she's only 18 still, and he freaks out. He's like, what the hell? How do you, but you're like, and she's like, well, I just matured when I got here. And he's like, well, so they decide they're going to stay an extra couple months. And that way they can kind of hide the fact that, like, you know, she wasn't necessarily the right age, you know. And that, because he's a little bit afraid of what his best friend, who he hasn't seen in years and years and years, for his friend, for him it's only been again a couple weeks, is going to think. But they call him back because there's been an emergency, and they need his abilities. He can control, like, water and sea creatures. And so the fourth book is them trying to keep their mating bond a secret from her parents, and then, like, failing spectacularly, and them both trying, because she's an empath, I forgot to mention that, so that's probably why she knew at such a young age that they were going to be mates. But they need his abilities because the Dark Fae have shown up, and they come to a tentative, you know, agreement at the end of the book, but they need something that is across an ocean, and Torian, why do I keep saying Torian? Torius is the only one who can get the boat there safely, of the ship. So I'm thinking that there's going to be more books in the series. I will say that the first book is the best, but it does have, again, usually person who's new to the world. You've got, you know, various Fae male characters who are all really sexy. Usually, you know, like, they're good people. Maybe they're a little rough around the edges, like Xander is a little rough around the edges. But it's just really interesting to see, like, the whole fated mate aspect, and how each person finds their mate in different ways. And the blind curse thing is a really interesting addition. And I really like the series a lot. And in fact, I really want to reread that first book, because I just loved it. Like, terrible cover and all. I just want to read it again. And then the last one, I will try to move quickly here because I know what happens when I talk for too long. And that is, you stop watching. I'm kidding. That's not really what I care about. I care that I won't be able to download this video. So the last series I'm going to talk about is called The Fae Universe. It's by Alessa Thorne. I think she is tentatively retitling this as The Wrath of the Fae. But it does take place in a larger Fae universe, so we'll kind of see. There are 3 books in the initial trilogy, and then there is a spin-off series that I will mention briefly. So the Fae Universe is about 3 brothers. So again, kind of this idea of, because, like, you think in ACOTAR, you've got Cassian, Azrael, and Rhys, right? And of course they're friends. Then in the Married to Magic, not everyone is that close, but each one is some sort of magical being, kind of in a marriage mated situation happening. And then in the between Dusk and Dawn, or Dawn and Dusk, not sure. Again, each person is a king or a prince. And then, of course, we have the warrior who's not. But it's interesting to see, like, these groups of men basically finding their romantic, you know, partners. So the first one is called Kiss of the Blood Prince. It is not the strongest book in the series, but you have to read it in order to get to the rest. And Kian and what's her name? Oh gosh. Elise. Kian and Elise. Kian is the Blood Prince. He and his brothers have been cursed. They have been sent into the Fae realm for 1,500 years, because Fae and elves and everybody used to all live in harmony, at least from what we understand. And then there was a battle, a war, and they made a blood oath that they would not fight, or that they wouldn't break the peace that they gained after this conflict. But the humans broke it, and then they were sent. Then the Fae were sent into this realm for 1500 years. So they've broken free, and they have this blood oath to act on. And so you start off with the Fae being quite violent. Elise dreams of working in a library with like cool old documents, but that's not the job she has now. And this is another one where there's a modern day aspect and then like the kind of Fae aspect. It doesn't really take place in different realms necessarily, because the Fae and then all these other magical creatures and stuff sort of come out of the shadows when the Fae come back. But she doesn't like go to a different realm. It's just that the Fae are coming back to where they used to be, which is like Earth, like, you know, England. So Elise is the only person that is not affected by the sort of madness that is overtaking all these people on this train when she's going on her way home one day from work. And Kian notices this and takes her kind of as a prisoner. And when they were cursed, their sort of worst trait became their curse. And so he was like this bloodthirsty warrior, didn't really care a lot about people's emotions. And so his curse is that he has to drink blood. And he has white hair, and the tips of it are red. And all his hair used to be red. But the closer he gets to death, like, that's when the curse is going to kill him, is when, you know. And so when there's no red left in his hair, that's when he's going to die. And there was a sorceress who was on their side who tried to build in, when this happened, sort of like a safety measure. Like, if you find your fated mate, then you won't die and you'll break the curse. But he always thought that was a fluke. But he and Elise had this connection. And I will say it's a little bit rough at first. But he drinks her blood, like she consensually gives him her blood. And again, not as weird as it sounds. It's not like blood play or anything. Well, I mean, maybe it is technically. I don't really know. But it's more vampiric, I guess you could say. So the red starts coming back into his hair. And so obviously she's his mate. Does he tell her? He didn't even know that was a thing, really. And him kind of consulting with his brothers and trying to figure it out. But mostly it's their sort of connection, and then whether or not the Fae are going to give humans another shot, because they blew it so many times. But Elise is human, and he owes it to her to try to find peace. These are shorter books. The longest one I've read so far is about 250 pages. The background world building is pretty solid. It can get a little like story timey in this series, just kind of set it up. But honestly, if you're looking for a quick read and you like, again, the ACOTAR light vibes, I would check out this series. So that's the first book. Again, the first book isn't the strongest book in the series. The second book is much better. It's called Heart of the Winter Prince. And this is about Bane, who is Kian's brother, and Freya. I keep wanting to say Feyre, but it's Freya. And Freya can find things. Some humans have like these magical abilities that maybe were amplified when the Fae came back into the realm. And because really there wasn't a whole lot of magic, right, in the world. It was the real world as we live in it. But she's always had sort of an ability to be able to find things. So she works in antiquities, trying to track down objects and stuff like that. And so Bane, his curse is that his heart is slowly freezing. And he's got like this circle around his heart that is like, when it completes, he'll die. He's not concerned with that. He's over the mate thing. He doesn't want to look for one. But Elise, who is not his sister, is like, I know you're not interested. I know you don't want to find your mate. I don't want you to die. We got to fix this shit. And so she has tracked down what she thinks is, using Kian's library, this dagger that might save him. And so Freya is going to help him find this dagger. And then you also have some interesting stuff happening with the fact that all these other magical creatures are coming out of the shadows, and humans are endangering them. And so you have this ex-boyfriend of Freya, who was a complete asshole to her, and trying to like get back at her. And so you also have this storyline. They're not just looking for the dagger, but also you have this other conflicts going on with elves going missing, and the conflicts that you would assume would happen if there had been an influx of new magical unknown creatures and humans got their greedy little hands in them and then try to fuck it all up, basically. Bane and Freya are like drawn to each other, and he's like, wait a second, is this like the mate shit that my brother was talking about? Because I thought he was just being like romantic and sappy and shit. But no, like it's a real thing. And so Bane is like definitely the tall, dark, and brooding type, the suffer in silence type, the like I'm too strong and don't want to deal with these emotions type. But then I feel really emotional, so like touch her and you die type. Okay, that's Bane. Kian is harder to nail down because he really is cut off from his emotions, because he was like the one who was the warrior, who was the leader in battles, but he's also very logical, and he's the one who is the king, really. Even though he's not the oldest brother, he does all the ruling, makes all these big decisions, leads the war councils, etc. So you get to know Kian more throughout the series, which is why I would encourage you to keep reading, in addition to the series getting better. But Bane is pretty easy to peg from the beginning. And so that's their story. Bane and Freya, and and then trying to solve some problems that are happening specifically because magic and magical creatures have come back into the world. Then the third book is my absolute favorite book, and that is The Wings of the Night Prince. And this is the one that has for reals, ACOTAR vibes. Again, it's ACOTAR light. So some of these books are more like ACOTAR like in terms of like LIKE, like similar sort of concepts. This series kind of feels more ACOTAR light in terms of there are a lot of similarities, but like it's not as good as ACOTAR, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't read it, right? And they're short too. So this is about my fave boy ever. His name is Killian. He is the oldest brother, and he was sort of like the courtesan, like sort of like man whore type. That was sort of his role with his family. And so he touched people a lot, I guess you could say. I just realized that I didn't say what Bane's, like I said his heart is freezing because his heart is like made of ice. Like he doesn't feel a lot because he was like the executioner, anyway, whatever. So now Killian can't touch people. His touch is poison. So he has to wear gloves all the time. And he is very Reese. He is very, I am sarcastic to deflect from the fact, that I am alone. I feel lonely. I can't touch people. I really want a mate. Like my brothers found mates, but I don't get a mate. Like I have always wanted a mate, even before I knew that was a thing. So he like feels deeply, and he sort of deflects that with his general attitude. But this is an interesting book because it introduces characters that then get their own sort of spin-off series. And it's about Killian and Braun. Braun is, and I can't remember her full name, but she is an Ironwood. And the Ironwoods are these humans. They've trained to be hunters, bounty hunters. One sister is really good at magic. They have varying abilities, and they've trained their whole lives because, one of their ancestors tried to kill Killian. And according to their legend, their family legend, Killian swore that he would wipe out the Ironwood family. But he's been gone. And then when the Fae came back, he never came for them. So she's a little bit pissed that she's doing this bounty and finding him, because he was kidnapped and taken for 3 years. And he's been kept in the prisons of this witch named Morgan, who's like this Fae witch. She crazy. She's very similar to that one girl from ACOTAR who like kept people down under the mountain or whatever. I can't remember her name, but you might. I don't know. And so Bronn goes to find him, and she's like, man, I know we need the money and for this bounty or whatever, but like, I wish I could beat his ass. And so he doesn't know why she's so pissed at him, because she breaks him out, and he's like, hell yeah, I get out. Like, I want to get out of here, because he's been tortured. It's not good, you know? And he has these like horrible scars on his back. And she's like, where are your wings, dude? And they talk about that later. But they make a deal that she will help him get out, and he will go willingly and not fight her, basically. And it's like a blood oath thing where you do like this whole cut your thumbs thing. But like, he doesn't get a chance to warn her that if she touches him, she could die. And she touches him anyway, and she doesn't die. And Killian, oh my God, he's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Is this a thing? Is this the mate thing? Oh my God. Like, this craziness. And he gets so excited about it, but he can't tell her about it, obviously. Because these boys they're not good at communicating. They're all like, ooh, I found my mate. You know what I'll do? Not tell her. So, oh God, it's so funny. I mean, it's not funny, but you're like, tell the truth, seriously. So the conflict in this one is still a continuation of the previous two books, but in this one, Morgan is she was locked away by Killian and Kian's and Bane's parents, but the magic is weakening, and she wants to set herself loose on humanity, and they have to try to stop her. And so that's what this book is about. And so it's so cool because you get to see all the characters again. Kian gets to further develop as a character because he really was underdeveloped in that first book. Elise is just like, she wants everybody to be a happy family, and she loves everyone. And this book is so good, though. Like, this was my favorite book. Like, Killian has all the right vibes. Like, truly, all the right vibes. And then, briefly, I do want to mention the spin-off series that is not done yet. I think there are 2 more books planned. And the first book is called Trash and Treasure. This book features the Ironwoods. The rest of the series is about the Ironwoods. It's called the Ironwood series. And so it is about Charlotte. And Charlotte is the younger sister of Bronn. And so now she has all these brothers, right? She's never had brothers. She's only ever had sisters. And so Kian has sort of taken her under his wing because he also knows quite a bit in regard to magic. They all do, but he seems to be more of like a Fae mage, which again goes more in developing his character. And so he kind of takes her under his wing. But there are also a family of magicians called the Great Drakes. And their youngest son, Reeve, was Charlotte's best friend many years ago. She's in her like mid-20s, I don't know, mid to late 20s. And something happened between them, a misunderstanding, which I will tell you right now is really annoying. She heard him say something about her, and instead of confronting him about it, she just believed it without asking. Ugh, annoying shit. But she's a fantastic magician. She's incredibly powerful. But she doesn't have all the right training because her family, no one in her family can do magic. And so, Morgan, who was the big bad in the third book, she had 3 generals who like helped her. And, one of them we saw in the third book, and I can't remember his name now. They call him the Battle Bard. It's like a Neon or something like that. And he's out, and he is trying to get people behind him. He's called a Battle Bard because he's very convincing. And he has like this beautiful voice. People listen to him. And he's trying to bring back like the world that would have existed if Morgan hadn't been defeated. And so it's kind of the 4th book overall in this series where they're all connected, but it's the first book in the Ironwood series. This is probably I don't know if it's the weakest book. It might be tied with Kiss of the Blood Prince, but it's interesting because, again, you get to see all the characters. So you get to see Elise and Freya and Bane and Killian and Bronn and Kian, and you also get to see characters who you met in the previous books that are like more side characters that might get their own book coming up. And you get to see a different side of the world because it's magic related, at least for Charlotte it is. And Reeve has 3 brothers. Their names are Valentine, Bassett, and Apollo. They go by Val, typically. Apollo has a longer name, but his shorter name is Apollo, and then Bass. And I think I know what's going to happen, but I'll tell you my ideas here in a minute. So the Ironwood #1, Trash and Treasure, it could be better, but it introduces what's going to be happening for the rest of the series. So then the next book I am in the middle of reading right now, and it is called God Touched, and it is about Bronze, another one of her younger sisters. Her name is Imogen, and Imogen has kind of a death wish. She's always had this weird connection to death. She almost died in drama when she was 11 years old. And she's very reckless. She like has an axe, like a battle axe that she fights with. She has lavender hair. She's covered in tattoos. And at the end of the 3rd book, the god of death, let's see here. I need to see if I can pronounce his name. It's like Arwen or something. But he's the god of death, Erewhon. And he sees her when he comes to retrieve Morrigan at the end of the 3rd book. And he like makes eye contact with her and says like, "Hello, darling," or something. And I was like, "Excuse me, who is this man? This weird death god. I need your story today." So that's also probably why the first Ironwood book was difficult to read, because we were just so excited about this guy. So he, in the first book, in the first Ironwood book, he ends up saving Imogen's life because she is mortally wounded, and she shows up in the realm of the dead. I cannot pronounce the name of it. And he's like, "You're not supposed to be here yet. Like, it's not your time. What's up?" Like, and he heals her because he's the god of the dead, but he can heal. And so, it's so good. And she's so violent. And he's sort of like a fish out of water because he's been asleep for like thousands of years or whatever. And he's still trying to play catch up. But they need him, the Fae Princes and the Great Drakes, and all of these people need this Erewhon, the god of the dead, because he's the only one who could defeat, not kill, but defeat this really powerful general that was like, so there's 3 generals. We defeated one of the generals, but now there's 2 more that may be coming forth at some point, and they need to take care of it. And he was the only one who ever came close to killing him, even though he couldn't. He could just contain him. And so she is there to help him hunt, but mostly she's there because he saved her life twice. And I won't tell you about the second time because it's an interesting thing that happens. But basically she owes him 2 life debts. And so he is interested by her. He's unsure as to why he's called to her. And so he wants to look into it. And so she comes to the realm of the dead. And he has like a castle set up in like Wales or something. And so she's staying with him, and they're going to go through his court and try to figure out who might be working against him, who might be trying to side with this other general whose name starts with an H that I don't remember. And it is just, it's really interesting. They have this connection, and he is like, ooh, he's got the dark hair and the dark eyes, and yes, okay. So then, this is what I think is going to happen, okay? I think what's going to happen is, so the next 2 books are about, there's Layla, who's another Ironwood sibling, and then there's another girl, I can't remember her name right now, who is a cousin. And they all work together, and they're each going to get their own book. But then, Alessa Thorne has said that that's going to be the end of the Ironwood series. But she spends as much time in book 3 of the Fae Universe, Killian and Braun's book, introducing the sisters, as she does in the first Ironward book, introducing Reeve, Great Drake's brothers, Val, Apollo, and Baz. I'm thinking we're going to get a Great Drakes series. We better. I hope so. Because the quality sometimes is not great. Writing-wise, they might be the weakest of the series that I'm recommending to you. But I think they're really enjoyable. And if you want to read like ACOTAR-esque type stuff, but you don't want to put in like the amount of time and focus that it takes to read like a chonky book, and you just want to like have fun, these books, all of them, I highly recommend for the fun factor, because they go quickly, they're easy to read, but they give you the same vibe. And I think that's what so much of us love about ACOTAR. And so I know this was a long video. That was 3 series that I talked about, and they're all still ongoing from what I understand. There will hopefully be at least one more in the Married to Magic book. She's already announced that one. In the Fae King's Curse, the Dawn and Dusk series, or between Dusk and Dawn, there's going to be at least, hopefully, one more book, Kai's book. And then the Fae Universe series is technically done, but it leads into the Ironwood series, which has 2 more books that are coming out probably this year. And then I think she's going to get into the Great Drakes, because again, she just spends so much time developing the idea of the magic that I think we're going to have to get those books. So those are my recommendations. I hope that was helpful to you, especially if you really been looking for something easy to read, fun to read. The Fae Universe ones are spicier than all the other ones I recommended. So there are definitely more sex scenes if that's what you're looking for. If you were looking for some like smuttier stuff, it's in there. Last thing I want to say, if you have any suggestions for me or for anyone watching, I'm assuming people are watching this, I don't know, okay, maybe no one's watching, but that you feel like are series that have similar vibes to ACOTAR, please put those in the comments. I will definitely check those. I am always looking for fantasy books that have great world building, great characters, but maybe don't take the time and effort to read as much as the ACOTAR books. I love those books, but I get very overwhelmed sometimes, and that's a reason why I haven't read her Throne of Glass series, because I want something manageable, and during the school year when I'm teaching, I know it can get really overwhelming for me. So that's all I have for you today. I'm so sorry about the interruptions. I'm a popular lady today, apparently. So that's it. Have a wonderful, wonderful day, night, year, whatever time you're watching this, and thank you for watching. Okay? Bye.